All right, so I want to finish up by talking about why people might help others from maybe a slightly different perspective than we have so far. So we've talked a little bit about, people might help when they get something out of it, or when they might expect something from somebody later through something like feeling better or reciprocity. And we know that people in some circumstances are going to help others when they have empathy for them and kind of put themselves in the other person's shoes. So we don't necessarily have a really good answer to are people good question yet. Are people selfish? Are they altruistic? Or do they ever help people when there's not necessarily anything in it for them? And that question, or that maybe feeling that, we wish people would help others when there's nothing in for it with them, you need to think about maybe the possibility that that's not necessarily a good thing. Like, would it really be a great thing if people helped other people for no benefit? And, like, why would that have been the case? Because it is kind of unique that human beings feel good about helping other people. In the animal kingdom, we're kind of unique in that sense that we have some kind of positive experience from helping each other. That most creatures are not as social as us and are not as used to feeling some positive thing from helping other people. Most creatures are a little more self-interested in that, basically. So I've talked about this before, and we'll talk about it again, certainly, but the reason for this is probably because we are successful evolutionarily, because we evolved to function in social groups. We evolved to cooperate. So this kind of undermines the idea that society, corrupts people or is some bad influence on people, because society is, a product of us being so cooperative and pro-social in general. So I think it's useful to think about some evolutionary perspectives about why we might help other people. And these two main ones I want to talk about are something called kin selection, preserving your own related genetic connections, and reciprocal altruism, the fact that we need to cooperate with other people. So, to explain kin selection, it is hopefully pretty straightforward that we want to promote genes that are similar to ours. And we do find that people that are genetically related, like people, their children, their siblings, their cousins, are more likely to help people that are related to one another. And this isn't... It's important to think about how evolution works, basically. That evolution is not working at the level of the individual, so it's not necessary that your adaptive behaviors are always working to keep your survival, but that your behaviors are going to benefit your genes. And those genes that you share with other people contribute to something called your inclusive fitness. Your inclusive fitness is the sum of your own fitness to put your genes forward, plus the sum of everyone else's fitness that you are contributing to in some way that are related to you. So someone might contribute to their inclusive fitness by saving their sibling's life, because their genes that they share with that sibling might also get passed on. Or a parent might, promote their well-being of their children, and that promotes their inclusive fitness by increasing the likelihood that their genes will be passed on through their children. So it's not all about the individual. Natural selection and evolution are operating at the level of genes. So kin selection can explain some of this, because if we have people that are sacrificing themselves for the good of their group, it kind of is counterintuitive that people that are maybe not going to survive are still going to increase the inclusive fitness by giving themselves up. So let's just kind of think quickly about a thought experiment where we have people that are kind of loners, that are more selfish and less likely to help out the group in terms of a threat. And we have people in blue that are helpers, and they're going to support each other and lay down their lives for each other. And, let's think about in an environment earlier in human history where there might be predators around, like a big scary saber-toothed tiger, and they come and they attack the group. Those different groups are going to have different outcomes. The loner people that are not helping each other out and are every person for themselves, more of them are going to die because they're not helping one another, so the argument goes. But the people that are helpers, maybe they're going to end up saving more of those people. And in those groups in early human history that were very highly related, those groups that had more helpers were going to survive more. And even though one of those people died, they improved their own inclusive fitness by helping people that were related to them. And there's tons of evidence for this in the modern world too. People are more likely to just give general help to people that are related to them. They're more likely to donate kidneys and other organs to people that are related to them. They're more likely to try to save their loved ones in a fire before looking for unrelated people, their friends. And they're more likely to help people that are related than strangers in other life-threatening situations too. And this seems to be true for animals because if this is something that's really operating in general for any animals that are able to carry out helping behaviors, then it should operate at the level of other animals too, which it does seem to do. One kind of counterintuitive thing is that inclusive fitness only matters to the extent that you're helping people that also have genes that they're going to be able to pass on. So it's in line with the predictions here that once people are past the ability to bear children, we would be less likely to help them. And generally, this kind of trend seems to be true, that when people are older, people are less likely to be helped. People are more likely to help younger individuals than older individuals, even if all of them are related to the person doing the helping, presumably because the younger ones have more of a chance left to pass on their genes. So it is better for one's inclusive fitness to help younger relatives than older relatives, and this does seem to happen in the real world. Okay. So moving on from kin selection to reciprocal altruism, kin selection doesn't explain enough about human behavior, though, because we do help people that aren't related to us, and that's been going back the entire span of human history, too. And genetic relatedness, it isn't that robust. Like, once you get past, cousins, the shared genetic material you'll have with people declines pretty quickly. But when we, were developing in our ancestral environment, it was useful to cooperate with other people that were not related to you for a lot of reasons. Like, if you could only ever rely on your relatives, then your group would stay relatively small and maybe not last all that long. So in early environments when it was a lot more dangerous to survive, it was useful to be able to band together with other people and have some sort of trust that you were going to be able to cooperate. So human beings in our ancestral environment that were able to cooperate and trust one another were more likely to survive because they were able to expect that favors were going to be paid back to one another and be able to give up something now to get something later and to have more security. One thing about this, though, is that or two things about this, I guess, that it requires that you can think complexly enough that you could say, I'm going to do this for you now in order to get something later, which is more complicated than most creatures are able to think about. But it also requires that you are not letting people just take advantage of that, I'll give you something now for something later thing, and then just not giving you something later. So cheater detection, or making sure that people are not taking advantage of trust, is also very important. So it was only the people that were able to cooperate and also, be able to be skeptical enough and detect cheaters and free riders that we would increase that fitness by getting something from other people. So it's important to remember that these things are, all operating at a very high level. We need to think about different levels of analysis when we think about any evolutionary explanation. So it's useful to think about ultimate explanations, which are these more evolutionarily based ones, and proximate explanations, which are the things that are operating in our moment-to-moment lives, in our immediate situations. Ultimate explanations might provide good, broad explanations for how things work, but they don't explain everything, right? Because we, act in response to things like the internet and voting, which are not like things that happen in the ancestral environment, right? So ultimate explanations have to do with why species in general evolve some general behavioral tendency. They're very broad in their orientation in that sense, but they are operating at the gene level, not the individual level, and they're things that are specifically going to help us pass on our genes, whether from us or people that are related to us. But proximate explanations are more specific. Those ultimate things impact everybody in a broad sense. Proximate explanations are why did one particular person engage in one particular action. So it's not a reason or excuse to think about these evolutionary things for individual people necessarily. They're just like going to change things on average. So when you think about individuals, they're not thinking about their genes generally and are passing them on. They're thinking about the other things that we've talked about in this class. They're thinking about keeping, paying back favors and making friends and feeling good and putting yourself in another person's shoes. So those things are more likely to be operating at the level of the individual, these proximate explanations. But those general motives that you were born with evolutionarily are, still operating and were things that we developed very early in human history. These things also are very useful to just think about how they might manifest in early in people's lives. So when you think about early childhood development, babies are likely to, cry when they hear other babies cry. They're hearing that distress and they're feeling empathy, and that's a lot of the way people might explain babies crying when they hear them in real time, but when they hear their own crying, they can recognize that and they're not going to start crying when they hear that. So they're differentiating in a pretty complex way, maybe indicating that empathy is kind of a natural mechanism that we have. Toddlers also very early on start to try to help other people in relatively simple tasks, of course. But we also see this in other animals. So close relatives of human beings like chimps, orangutans, bonobos, things like that, we see prosocial behavior frequently in their behavior out in the wild and in captivity. So it does seem that prosocial behavior is something that other animals, especially ones closely related to us, are capable of. So these benefits seem to have come about pretty early in evolutionary history if they're present in those creatures that split off from us a long time ago in that history. But it's important to remember it doesn't mean that helping is like always going to happen, that it's inevitable. We have these things in our way like the bystander effect, diffusion of responsibility. There are lots of things that might keep us from helping, but we seem to have an overall tendency and a kind of adaptive reason that we engage in helping. In addition, it's useful to note that we don't help everybody, basically. We're more likely to help people that are similar to us than dissimilar to us. We're more likely to help people in our in-groups than our out-groups. Partly because we're able to better put ourselves in the shoes of people that are similar to us. It's easier to put yourselves, to take the perspective of someone close to you than someone more like socially distant from you, basically. Just because I haven't really talked about this yet, We'll talk about it more in group processes and prejudice, but when I say in-group member, I mean somebody in any of your like identity groups that you have. Out-group member being somebody in that has identities that are different from yours, basically. But in-group members, you might identify with them and empathize with them and help them because of that. Out-group members, you might be only likely to assist them if there's some kind of reciprocal agreement that you're able to come to, and if those social exchange types of concerns that I brought up with social exchange theory, the benefits for you are outweighing the costs, then you might help an out-group member. Obviously, it's not always the case you're going to help an in-group member and only help an out-group member when it really benefits you. But on average, these things tend to be relatively predictive. Okay, so that wraps up prosocial behavior, and I will see you. It's really hard to end these videos, so I'm just going to stop.